The summer sun hung low over King's Landing, painting the Red Keep with fire-like light, but the mood inside the city was colder than winter. In the dungeons, Lord Eddard Stark sat in chains, his body weak, his heart heavy. His only crime was truth. He had tried to protect Robert's children, tried to warn his friend about the Lannister lies, but Robert Baratheon, his oldest friend, had been struck by the boar. Or so everyone believed. But this story is different. Robert did not die. The Maesters had worked tirelessly, pouring milk of the poppy into his throat, burning away the poison of the wound. Against all odds, Robert lived. He rose weak, limping and scarred, but alive enough to hold the weight of his crown. When word spread through the Red Keep that Robert was awake, the halls changed. Cersei Lannister's calm mask cracked. Her plans, woven so tightly, began to slip through her fingers like sand. She had counted on Robert's death, counted on Ned being silenced forever. Now she walked the corridors with fear behind her green eyes. Robert called for Ned as soon as he had the strength to sit on the Iron Throne. When Eddard was dragged from his cell, dirty, half-broken, he expected nothing but humiliation. He thought he was being walked to his death. But when the throne room doors opened, there stood Robert, leaning on a cane, his face pale, but his eyes burning with the fury of the storm god himself. 7 hells. "Ned," Robert growled when he saw his friend. "I wake from near death to find you in chains. Have the lions lost their wits?" The Lannister guards hesitated. All eyes turned to Cersei, who stood by Joffrey's side. The boy king wore his crown of sharp points, but suddenly it seemed far too heavy for him. "Robert." Cersei started, her voice sweet, careful. "Your wound was deep. You must not overstrain yourself. Eddard Stark betrayed you. He confessed his treason." "Confessed?" Robert barked, his voice echoing like a hammer on steel. "Ned Stark wouldn't confess to pissing in a chamber pot unless he truly believed it a crime." "He told me the truth, Cersei. He told me your truth." Gasps filled the hall. The lords of the court shifted, whispers spreading like wildfire. Cersei's jaw tightened. Joffrey turned red with rage, but his lips trembled. He was no king now, not with Robert standing. "Release him," Robert commanded. His voice left no room for argument. When no one moved, Robert slammed his cane on the ground. "By the gods, do it now, or I'll gut the next man who hesitates." The chains were struck from Ned, and he staggered forward. Robert caught him by the shoulder. For a moment both men stood there, tired, scarred, broken in different ways, but still brothers from Winterfell and the Vale, still bound by years of war and trust. Ned bowed his head. "I thought I'd lost you, Robert." Robert's grip tightened. "And I nearly lost myself. But no more lies, no more games." Then he turned to the court. His voice thundered, shaking the walls of the Red Keep. "The Queen has betrayed me. Her children are no true heirs of mine. They are Lannister bastards, born of her and her brother's sin. I name them false. They will never sit the Iron Throne." Chaos exploded. Some lords cried out in support, others in shock. Cersei's mask fell away completely. Rage and terror twisted her face. She clutched Joffrey's arm, as if she could shield him from the storm. But Robert was not finished. "From this day my heir is Stannis Baratheon, my true blood, my brother. The realm will know the truth. And if any man, lion or wolf or dragon dares stand against it, let them face my fury." Ned looked at his old friend and saw not just a king, but the warrior who had crushed Rhaegar at the Trident, the man who had built a throne from rebellion. And in that moment he knew the game had changed. The throne room had never seen such noise. The lords shouted, the ladies whispered behind their hands, and the gold cloaks looked at one another in confusion, waiting to see which way the wind would turn. Cersei stood tall, her nails digging into Joffrey's arm. The boy king tried to speak, his voice cracking with fury. "He's lying. I am the king. I am the rightful," Robert roared, louder than any lion. "You're no son of mine." His words cut through the chaos like a blade. "You're Jaime's whelp, and every soul in this hall knows it now. You are nothing to me, boy." "Nothing!" Joffrey's face twisted, his crown slipping askew as tears welled up in his eyes. He turned to his mother for strength, but Cersei's mask of pride was cracked. For once the queen had no words that could save her. Guards, she shrieked, her voice breaking. "Seize them both! Seize Robert and Ned before it is too late." But the gold cloaks hesitated. Their eyes flicked between the Queen and the King. The Queen was cunning, dangerous, but the King was Robert Baratheon, their Lord of Storms, the man who had smashed the Targaryens. And Robert still had his fury. "You dare!" Robert's cane slammed down again. His voice shook the room like thunder rolling across the sea. "Every man who raises a blade against me or Eddard Stark will be named traitor and broken on the wheel. I am your king! Do you hear me?" The gold cloaks lowered their spears. For the first time in years, Cersei's power slipped through her hands. She stared at the men around her, men she had thought she owned with coin and whispers, and saw them turn their eyes away. Her breath came sharp and shallow like a cornered beast. Ned leaned close to Robert, speaking low, so only he could hear. "We must move quickly. If she escapes, she will rally the lions. Jaime commands the Kingsguard. He will not stand idle." Robert nodded, his jaw clenched. "Then we cut out the rot at its root." He turned, pointing a trembling but steady hand toward Cersei. "Queen or not, you are guilty of treason. Guards, take her." And the bastards too, the court froze. To seize a queen, this was a step beyond scandal. It was war. But Robert's fury was iron, and his command was law. Slowly, reluctantly, the gold cloaks advanced. Cersei pulled Joffrey behind her, her green eyes burning with hatred. "You fool, Robert. You drunken, blind fool. Do you think you've won? You've already lost. Without me, you are nothing but a fat relic clinging to a rusted crown." Robert's face twisted, pain and anger mixing together. For a heartbeat, his hand went to the hilt of the great warhammer that had crushed princes and kings. But Ned laid a hand on his arm, steadying him. "Justice, not vengeance," Ned murmured. "Do not stain your own truth with her blood." The gold cloaks closed in, taking hold of Cersei and Joffrey. She fought like a wildcat, spitting curses, her crown tumbling to the floor. Joffrey screamed, his voice shrill with terror. "I'll have your heads! I'll have you all killed! I am the king!" But no one listened. Robert sagged back onto the Iron Throne, his body heavy with pain, but his will unbroken. His eyes met Ned's, and for a moment a tired smile crossed his lips. "7 hells, Ned. Maybe you were right all along. Maybe I should have listened sooner." Ned's face was grim. "It is not too late. But we must act fast. Cersei will not be the only lion ready to bite. Jaime will not forgive this insult, nor will Tywin." At the name, Robert's smile faded. Tywin Lannister, the old lion in the west. To strike his daughter and grandchildren in the capital was to spit in the lion's face. War would come, and it would be bloodier than Robert's rebellion. The lords in the hall began to shout again, some crying for justice, others for mercy. A few dared to whisper of civil war. Robert raised his hand, silencing them. His voice was weary, but still strong enough to carry. "This court is ended. Take them away, lock them in the black cells, and summon my brother Stannis. He is heir now by law and blood. The realm must know the truth." Cersei was dragged screaming from the hall, Joffrey thrashing in her grip. The echoes of their cries followed them down the corridor like the wails of ghosts. When the doors closed, silence settled heavy on the throne room. Robert leaned forward, rubbing a hand across his scarred face. For the first time, he looked every year of his age. Ned stood beside him, his voice low and steady. "You have done what few kings would dare. But this is only the beginning. The lions will not sleep quietly, and the realm will bleed if we are not careful." Robert gave a bitter laugh. "The realm always bleeds, Ned. At least this time it will bleed for the truth." Outside, the city stirred with rumors. The queen imprisoned, the king risen from death's door, bastards on the throne no longer. Some cheered Robert's name, others whispered of the Lannisters' vengeance, and somewhere in the Red Keep's shadows, Jaime Lannister heard the news. His hand tightened on the hilt of his sword, his golden hair gleaming like fire in the torchlight. The Kingslayer had been silent, watching, waiting. Now his oath and his heart both demanded blood. The game was no longer of thrones. It was of survival. The night after the Queen's arrest, King's Landing did not sleep. Torches burned along the streets as rumors raced through every alley and tavern. The small folk whispered that the king had risen from his deathbed by the god's own hand. Others swore that Circe was no true queen at all, but a witch who had poisoned the crown with bastards. The air smelled of fear, like the city itself waited for a sword to fall. Within the Red Keep, that sword was already unsheathing. Jaime Lannister stood in his white cloak, staring out at the city from a high window. Below, he could see gold cloaks guarding the queen's tower, keeping her locked away like a common thief. His jaw clenched, golden hair shining in the moonlight. His sister, his children, his blood, they were caged, humiliated, dragged through the mud by the same man who had once called himself their king. The Kingslayer's knuckles whitened around the hilt of his sword. Sir Boros and Sir Meryn, fellow Kingsguard, hovered near the door, whispering uneasily. Jaime turned sharply. "You two look like frightened girls. Did you take an oath to protect the queen and her children, or to tremble like rats in a cellar?" Boros shifted nervously. "Our oath is to the king. And who is the king?" Jaime snapped. His voice was low but dangerous, like a lion's growl. "That drunken oaf on the throne, who should have died of a boar's tusk? Or Joffrey, born of Cersei's body, the boy we all swore to protect?" The other said nothing. Silence was safer. Jaime turned back to the window, his mind burning. He could kill Robert easily. He had done it before, after all. Slaying a king was his gift. But this time it was different. Robert was not alone. Ned Stark stood at his side, and unlike Robert, Stark was no fool. Stark would guard Robert's back with a wolf's loyalty, and Jaime knew better than to think he could cut down both men without consequence. No, this would not be settled by a single blade in the dark. This would be war. Far to the west, in the stone halls of Casterly Rock, the raven had already flown. Lord Tywin Lannister read the words by the light of a dozen candles. His face betrayed nothing, but the servants who passed the hall swore they could feel the air grow colder as his golden eyes scanned the parchment. The queen imprisoned. Joffrey cast aside. Robert alive. Stark at his side. Tywin folded the letter, his jaw tightening. A lesser man might have raged, torn the letter, cursed the gods. But Tywin Lannister did not waste anger. He used it. "Summon Kevin," he said calmly. "Summon every bannerman from the Westerlands. The Starks and Baratheons think they've won a victory, but they have only woken the lion." Back in the capital, Ned Stark could feel the storm coming. He sat with Robert in the solar, the king's cup of wine untouched for once. A map of Westeros lay between them, scattered with tokens for armies. "Tywin will not stay quiet," Ned warned. His voice was steady, but there was no mistaking the grimness in his tone. "He will come with fire and steel. And Jaime, he will try to strike before we are ready." Robert scowled, running a hand through his beard. "Let him come. I've beaten the lions before. I'll do it again." Ned shook his head. "This is not the rebellion. Then we fought together with a clear cause. Now the realm is divided. The Reach will hesitate. The Riverlands may side with us, but the Vale is far, and the North is days away. If Tywin marches, he will move faster than we can rally. We must tread carefully." Robert slammed a fist on the table. "Carefully? While that golden horse whelp sits plotting in his cell. No, Ned, I will not crawl like some craven. I am the king. If Tywin wants war, I'll give him one." "Your Grace," Ned said firmly, "a king's duty is not only to fight, but to rule. If you throw the realm into war without thought, the people will suffer. You must prove to them that this is justice, not vengeance. Send ravens to every corner of the realm. Let them know the truth of Joffrey's blood. Let them see that the king acts for law, not anger." Robert glared at him, but slowly, his fists unclenched. He leaned back, exhausted, the fire dimming in his eyes. "7 hells, Ned. You always did know how to rob the taste of battle from my mouth." Ned allowed himself the faintest smile. "Better robbed of taste than robbed of victory." Outside the chamber, footsteps echoed. A messenger knelt before them, breathless with haste. "My lords, the Kingslayer has gathered his men. He means to march on the cells tonight." Robert surged to his feet, the old fury flaring again. He reached for his warhammer, the same weapon that had crushed princes and shattered kings. His voice thundered, "Then let him come. Let the Kingslayer try his hand again at killing a king. This time he'll find I'm not so easy to slay." Ned rose beside him, drawing his sword. In the stillness before the storm, both men shared a glance. Old friends, standing once more on the edge of war, and somewhere deep in the castle, Jaime Lannister fastened his golden armor, the lion roaring upon his chest. His heart burned with love and rage, and he swore silently that no man, king or wolf, would take Cersei from him. The Red Keep was about to drown in blood. The Red Keep had always been a nest of whispers, but that night it throbbed with the sound of steel. The corridors echoed with armored boots as Jaime Lannister moved through the castle like a golden shadow. His white cloak billowed behind him, shining as brightly as his armor in the torchlight. But there was no honor in his steps, only fury. At his back came a score of loyal men, some of the Kingsguard, some gold cloaks who had been bought with Lannister coin. Their faces were hard, eyes set on the task. To them, this was not betrayal. This was duty, to protect the queen, their true queen, and her son. The guards at the black cells never saw it coming. The first fell with a sword through his throat, the second with his skull crushed against stone. Within moments, the air stank of blood and burning torches. Jaime strode forward, his blade red to the hilt, his voice calm as if he were ordering wine. "Open the cell," he commanded. The heavy iron door creaked open, and Cersei stepped out. Her golden hair was wild, her gown torn, but her pride burned fiercer than any crown. She gripped Joffrey's hand, pulling him close. "My lion," she whispered to Jaime, her voice trembling with relief. "I knew you would not fail me." Jaime cupped her face briefly, his eyes soft only for her. Then he turned, his voice iron once more. "Back to the throne room. Tonight, the lions take back their den." But word of their escape reached Robert and Ned before they reached the hall. The messenger was bloody, staggering, but alive enough to speak. The Kingslayer. "He's freed them. They're coming here." Robert's blood boiled hotter than wine ever had. He seized his warhammer, the great head of steel still dented from the trident, and rose like a storm. "Then we meet them here. I'll see Jaime's golden head on a spike before dawn." Ned Stark was already moving, his sword ice heavy and cold in his hands. He had no taste for the chaos of King's Landing, no love for southern plots, but Jaime Lannister had broken all bonds of honor tonight. And honor was something Ned could not forgive. They marched together to the throne room, their guards rallying behind them. By the time they reached the great hall, the Iron Throne loomed above them, jagged and cruel, as if waiting for blood to be spilled at its feet. And blood came. The doors burst open, Jaime leading his men forward, Cersei and Joffrey behind them. The hall erupted as gold cloaks clashed with gold cloaks, steel ringing against steel, cries echoing to the rafters. Men who had shared ale the day before now cut one another down in the name of wolf or lion. Robert waded into the fray like the warrior of old, his warhammer crushing skulls, breaking shields, sending armored men sprawling like children. The years of wine and gluttony seemed to fall away in that moment. He was once more the man who had shattered Rhaegar at the Trident, a storm in human form. "Kingslayer," Robert bellowed, swinging his hammer in a deadly arc. "Come taste death again." Jaime met him, their weapons clashing with a sound that shook the hall. Hammer against sword, fury against skill. Robert's strength was a mountain, Jaime's blade a serpent, darting and striking with precision. Sparks flew as they circled one another, each blow echoing like thunder. Meanwhile, Ned faced Ser Meryn and Ser Boros, his great sword ice carving through them with the cold justice of the north. He moved like winter itself, slow but unstoppable, each strike ending in blood. His men rallied to him, crying the name Stark as they cut down their foes. But the danger was not only in steel. At the far end of the hall, Cersei screamed orders, her voice shrill above the chaos. "Kill Robert! Kill the wolf! Protect my son!" Joffrey clung to her skirts, his face pale with terror, the crown slipping down his brow. The battle raged on. Jaime's blade slipped past Robert's guard, slicing a line across his arm. Robert grunted, pain flashing in his eyes, but he only laughed, a deep, terrible laugh that sent chills through his enemies. "Is that all, Kingslayer? You cut kings with whispers, not with steel." He swung his hammer in a brutal arc. Jaime barely dodged, the weapon smashing into a pillar and sending stone splinters flying. The hall itself seemed to tremble with their clash. Ned, bloodied but unbroken, cut his way through to Robert's side. For a heartbeat, Wolf and Stag stood shoulder to shoulder. "Brothers once more in the storm of war. End this," Ned said, his voice hard. Together they pressed Jaime back, the weight of hammer and greatsword driving him to his knees. Sparks lit his golden armor, his breath coming ragged. Still his eyes burned, not with fear, but with love, for Cersei, for the children he swore to protect. Cersei screamed, her voice echoing through the chaos. "Jaime." And in that heartbeat of distraction, Robert raised his warhammer high, ready to bring it down with all the fury of storms past. The hall seemed to freeze. Blades paused, men stared, breath held. The Kingslayer's fate balanced on the edge of steel, but in the shadows above, unseen, another hand moved, a sellsword, wrought with gold, loosing an arrow aimed straight for Robert's chest. The storm and the wolf would not win so easily. The arrow cut the air like a whisper of death. It struck Robert in the chest, sinking deep just above his heart. The king staggered, his warhammer slipping from his grip, crashing against the stone floor with a sound that seemed to echo through every chamber of the Red Keep. "Robert!" Ned's voice roared as he caught his friend before he fell. Blood spread across the king's tunic, hot and dark, staining Ned's hands. Jaime, still on his knees, saw his chance. His sword flashed upward, aimed to finish what the arrow had started. But Ned was faster. I swung with the strength of every wolf of Winterfell before him, smashing against Jaime's blade. Sparks flew, and Jaime was forced back, his teeth bared in frustration. Robert gasped for breath, clutching at Ned's arm. 7 hells. Not again. I won't die again. His voice was ragged, but his fury still lived. Ned shoved him against the base of the Iron Throne, shielding him with his own body as men fought and screamed around them. His eyes swept the chaos, searching for the archer. On the balcony above, a cloaked sellsword knocked another arrow. Ned barked an order. "Archers, bring him down!" But before his own men could loose, the sellsword was gone into the shadows, vanishing like smoke. Below, the battle raged harder. Lannister men screamed for their queen, Stark and Baratheon loyalists cried for their king. Blood slicked the marble floor. Dead men lay sprawled at the foot of the Iron Throne as if the chair itself demanded sacrifice. Cersei, her gown torn and face twisted with desperation, clutched Joffrey tighter. She shrieked at the gold cloaks nearest her. "Kill them! Do you hear me? Kill them both! My son is your king!" But her voice had lost its power. The men hesitated, their eyes torn between the bleeding Robert Baratheon, their living king, and the boy she claimed was true. Then Joffrey himself found his courage, or madness. He wrenched free from his mother's grip, his young face twisted into something cruel. He pointed at Robert, his voice high and sharp. "Slay him! Slay the usurper! I am the king!" The words only fueled the storm. Some gold cloaks roared for Joffrey, charging forward with steel in hand. Others moved to defend Robert, rallying around Ned's steady presence. The throne room split down the middle, brother killing brother, guard slaying guard. Robert, blood pouring from his wound, snarled through clenched teeth. "The boy! Gods help me, I should have killed him years ago." Ned's voice was grim. "Save your strength. You'll need it to finish this." Jaime, rising to his feet once more, his armor dented and golden cloak torn, saw the king faltering. His chance was slipping, but his rage burned brighter. He charged, sword aimed not at Robert this time, but at Ned Stark. "Move aside, wolf!" he shouted. Ned met him head-on. Ice clashed with Jaime's blade in a storm of sparks. Every strike Jaime made was fast and furious, born of love and desperation. Every blow Ned returned was heavy, precise, and unyielding. Like the North itself, their duel raged at the center of the chaos, as if the war of wolf and lion was being fought in miniature within the Red Keep. But Robert was fading. His breaths came shorter, weaker. His hand gripped the base of the Iron Throne, smearing blood across the cold steel blades. He looked up at the jagged chair. the symbol of everything he had won and everything he had lost. And his eyes filled with something between rage and sorrow. He forced himself upright, clutching his warhammer once more. His voice thundered, raw and bloody. Enough! The sound was like a god's roar. Men froze mid-swing, stunned by the sheer will in it. Even Jaime paused, his sword inches from Ned's throat. Robert staggered forward, hammer in hand, his body failing but his spirit burning. He pointed the weapon at Cersei and Joffrey. By my blood and by the gods, I name them traitors. Every man who stands for them stands against me. Choose now, king or lions. The hall wavered. Men looked at one another, torn between gold and crown. Then slowly, more and more dropped to one knee before Robert. The weight of his fury, even bleeding, even dying, was too much to defy. Cersei's face twisted in horror. Joffrey screamed, his shrill voice breaking. Cowards! You'll all die for this! Father will avenge us! But no one moved to protect them. Not anymore. Jaime's teeth clenched. He looked at his sister, then at the king, then at Ned Stark standing ready with ice. For the first time in years, doubt flickered across his face. He lowered his sword, but his eyes still burned with promise. This isn't over. Jaime spat. Robert coughed blood, his hammer slipping from his grasp. He swayed, nearly falling. Ned caught him, steadying him once more. Hold on, Ned said firmly. We'll get you to the Maesters. But Robert only shook his head, blood on his lips. His eyes burned as they locked on Cersei and her son. No, Ned, end it, end them. Before Tywin comes. Before this realm drowns. Cersei's eyes widened. Joffrey clung to her skirts, screaming for mercy, and Ned Stark, torn between his honor and his friend's command, stood frozen with ice in his hands. The fate of the realm hung in that single heartbeat. The throne room was silent now, except for the crackle of torches and the moans of the dying. The Iron Throne loomed above it all, its cruel steel glinting red with blood. At its base, Robert Baratheon bled heavily, his massive frame shaking with each breath. He looked more ghost than man, but his eyes burned with a fire that would not die. Ned Stark stood above him, ice heavy in his hands. The blade was more than a sword. It was a weight of judgment, a symbol of northern justice. And Robert's words still hung in the air like a blade itself. End them, end her, end the boy. Cersei clutched Joffrey tighter, her green eyes filled with a mix of fury and terror. The boy king shrieked like a cornered animal, his voice cracking as he tried to sound commanding. I am the king. Kill him, mother! Kill the traitor! I command you! But no soldiers moved. Too many had bent the knee to Robert. Too many saw the truth now. Cersei's claws had been ripped away. Ned's grip tightened on his sword. He had executed men before, traitors, oathbreakers, deserters. But this, to cut down a woman and a boy in front of the whole realm, to butcher children no matter their blood. His honor screamed against it. Do it, Robert rasped, coughing blood. His voice was a storm-breaking stone. If they live, Tywin will bring fire and steel. The boy will wear a crown of swords, and you'll see the realm drown in war. End it now, Ned. End it for good. Ned's heart was torn. He had come south for justice, for truth, not murder. But he also knew Robert was right. If Joffrey lived, the lions would never stop hunting. And mercy, here in this nest of vipers, might mean death for thousands later. The great hall seemed to hold its breath. At last, Ned spoke, his voice steady but heavy with sorrow. I will not strike down children. That is not my way, but neither will I let them walk free. He lowered ice, pointing its gleaming tip toward Joffrey. Guards, take them. The queen and her son will remain prisoners until the realm is ready to judge them. Cersei screamed, her voice sharp with venom. Coward, weak northern fool! You think mercy will save you? Tywin will flay you, Stark. He'll burn your wolf pups one by one. Her words rang like curses across the throne room. But the guards obeyed Ned, seizing her arms and dragging her back. Joffrey kicked and shrieked, clawing at the floor as they pulled him away. His crown clattered to the stones, rolling to Robert's feet. The king looked down at it, blood dripping from his beard. He gave a bitter laugh, half choke, half snarl. There it is, the cursed thing. Look, Ned, it never fit me. It never will. Ned knelt beside him, steadying his friend as the maesters rushed forward. Save your strength. "You're not done yet," Robert shook his head. His hand, heavy and trembling, gripped Ned's wrist. "Don't lie to me, old friend. I can feel it. The gods are calling." His eyes flicked toward the doors where Cersei and Joffrey had been dragged away. "You should have killed them." "You'll see, Ned. Mercy will cost us all." Ned's jaw tightened. "If blood must be spilled, let it be in battle, not on a child's neck." Robert's laugh faded into a cough, blood bubbling on his lips. "You're too good for this world, Stark. Too damned good." The maesters worked desperately, but their eyes told the truth. The arrow had pierced deep, tearing through lung and flesh. The king would not live long, no matter their herbs or prayers. Robert gripped Ned one last time, his voice now only a whisper. "Promise me one thing. Stannis, tell him the truth. Tell him he is heir. Don't let the lions twist it. Swear it, Ned." Ned bowed his head. "I swear." And with that, Robert Baratheon, the Storm Lord, the usurper, the king who had smashed dragons, breathed his last beneath the Iron Throne. His great chest fell still, his warhammer slipping from his hand for the final time. A silence deeper than death filled the hall. Men bowed their heads, some wept. Others only stared at the fallen giant. Ned rose slowly, ice still in his grip. He looked to the kneeling soldiers, his voice carrying the weight of a king, though he wore no crown. "Robert Baratheon is dead, but his word is law. Stannis Baratheon is the true heir. From this day, the wolves and the stag stand together against the lions. Any man who calls Joffrey king calls himself traitor." The words thundered through the throne room. Some men shouted their loyalty to Stannis at once, eager to be on the winning side. Others slipped away, silent, already planning to flee to Tywin's camp. Far away in the west, Tywin Lannister would soon hear of Robert's death, Cersei's imprisonment, and Ned Stark's defiance. And when he did, the lion's claws would come out in full. For now, the Iron Throne stood empty, its blades shining with fresh blood. The storm was over. The war was about to begin. Word travels faster than ravens when it smells of blood. By dawn the city knew Robert Baratheon was dead. The king, who had crushed dragons and toppled thrones, had fallen not to a prince's sword, but to an assassin's arrow in his own hall. Some whispered poison. Others swore it was Lannister treachery. None dared say it too loudly. The small folk poured into the streets, half in mourning, half in fear. Bells tolled from the Sept of Baelor, their mournful clang rolling over King's Landing like waves. And in the Red Keep, the great game shifted again. Eddard Stark did not sleep that night. He stood at the window of the Tower of the Hand. Ice laid across the table beside him, its pale steel catching the first light of dawn. Below, the city seethed with unrest. The Queen was in chains. Her son screamed in the dungeons like a mad dog. And Robert's corpse lay draped in banners, waiting to be burned on pyre or entombed in stone. But grief left no room for rest. War was coming. Maester Pycelle, trembling more than usual, confirmed it with his quavering voice. "My lord, a raven has flown from the rock. Lord Tywin summons his banners. Already thousands march east. They say he means to take the city in fire and gold." Ned's jaw tightened. He had expected nothing less. Tywin Lannister had never forgotten a slight, never forgiven an insult. Now his daughter was caged, his grandson cast aside, his son branded traitor. Tywin would not send letters or lawyers. He would send steel, and the realm, it too began to fracture. From Dragonstone came word that Stannis Baratheon had raised his banners. He declared himself the rightful king, Robert's true heir, and denounced Cersei's children as bastards born of incest. The raven carried his words across Westeros. "The Iron Throne is mine by law and blood. Any who deny me are false and traitors." Many lords nodded, for law was on his side. But Stannis was no Robert. He was hard, cold, without charm or mercy. Few loved him. Few would die for him gladly. Renly, younger and hungrier, had already begun whispering in the Reach. He promised something Stannis never could: hope, charm, a king people might actually want. Already some lords muttered that Renly's crown would sit lighter on the realm than Stannis's iron fist. 3 kings in waiting, and none on the throne. Ned gathered his household guard and what loyalists he could muster. Sir Barristan Selmy, pale but steady, came before him. The old knight bowed deeply. "Lord Stark, the realm bleeds. But I swore an oath to protect the crown, not a man. If you name Stannis king, my sword is his," Ned nodded. "Robert trusted you." "I will too." Sir Barristan's face hardened. "Then you must act quickly. The lions will not wait for Stannis to march. Jaime lives. He will not sit idle while his kin rot in chains." And indeed, Jaime had vanished from the Red Keep during the chaos of the night. Some whispered he fled to rally Tywin's host. Others said he lurked still in the city, plotting to slit Ned Stark's throat. The hand of the king could trust no one. That evening, Ned met with the lords who remained in the capital. Some bent the knee to Stannis at once. Others wavered, fearful of Tywin's wrath. And some whispered that perhaps Joffrey should be restored, that peace was worth swallowing lies. Ned's patience burned thin. He stood at the table, ice before him, his voice cutting through the bickering. "The king is dead. His word is law. He named Stannis heir, and I swore to him I would uphold it. You may waver, you may tremble, but I will not. If you will not stand with me, then stand aside." The hall fell quiet. Even the boldest men quailed at his tone, but whispers of doubt still spread. Ned could feel them like poison in the air. The South was no place for wolves. Honor was a blade too blunt for this game, yet it was the only one he carried. That night, as he prepared to ride to Winterfell to call his banners, his daughter Arya slipped into his chamber. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. "Father," she whispered, "I saw Ser Jaime. He was in the tunnels. He had men with him. They're not leaving the city." Ned felt the chill of winter crawl up his spine. Jaime was here still, hiding in the bowels of the Red Keep like a lion in the dark, waiting for his chance to strike again. The game was not over. It had only begun. Far away in Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister's host marched with fire and steel. In Dragonstone, Stannis prepared ships and soldiers. In Highgarden, Renly spun webs with the Tyrells. And in King's Landing, Eddard Stark stood in the storm's center, with Robert's last words haunting him. "You should have killed them. Ned, mercy will cost us all." The Red Keep was a fortress, but by now it felt more like a tomb. Smoke hung in the air from burned bodies cleared from the throne room, the scent of blood never truly leaving the stone. Men spoke in whispers, their hands never far from their blades. Trust had become as rare as mercy. Ned Stark barely slept. When he did, Robert's last words came back to him, bitter as winter winds. "You should have killed them. Ned, mercy will cost us all." And mercy was already bleeding him dry. Stannis' ravens had been sent, but his banners were still far away. Tywin's host was marching faster than any wolf could rally the north. The city was caught between lion and stag, and the wolf was standing in the middle, with his sword alone. That night, as Ned pored over maps, Sir Barristan Selmy entered his chambers. The old knight's face was grim, his hand resting lightly on the hilt of his sword. "My lord," he said softly, "the Kingslayer moves. My men saw him slipping into the tunnels again. He means to strike tonight." Ned rose, ice in his hands, his jaw tightening. "Then let him come. I will face him myself." But Jaime Lannister was not a man who fought wars like Robert. He was a serpent in golden armor, striking where the bite would hurt most. The first screams came from the dungeons. Ned and his guard rushed down, the sound of steel and death echoing through the black cells. When they arrived, the torches revealed a slaughter. Lannister men, cloaked in red and white, had cut down half the gold cloaks. The Queen's chamber door hung open. Inside, Cersei was gone. Joffrey, too. Chains lay shattered on the ground. Ned's blood went cold, and then came the roar of fire. Above them in the city streets, buildings began to burn. Lannister agents had set the capital aflame to cover the Queen's escape. Smoke billowed into the sky, black as a dragon's breath. "They mean to run to Tywin," Barristan said sharply. "No," Ned answered grimly, his voice colder than winter. "Jaime means to kill me first." The final confrontation came in the throne room, as if fate itself demanded that the Iron Throne be the stage of every reckoning. Ned and his remaining loyal men entered, the smoke of the burning city seeping even here. The blades of the throne glimmered in the firelight, cruel and waiting, and at its base stood Jaime Lannister, golden armor dented, white cloak stained with blood. Beside him was Cersei, her eyes burning with triumph and venom, Joffrey at her side, clutching a sword too large for him. The boy's face was twisted with hate, his shrill voice echoing, "Traitor! You'll kneel before me, Stark, or I'll have your head." Jaime's smile was cold. "You should have listened to Robert, Stark. You should have killed them when you had the chance." "Now the lions rise again!" Ned stepped forward, ice in his hands, his face carved from stone. "Robert's will is law. Stannis is king. You are traitors, every one of you." Cersei laughed, sharp and cruel. "Stannis? The realm will never love him. Tywin is already marching. The people will cheer when the lions return to their den." But Jaime was done with words. He drew his sword, the steel gleaming in the firelight. "This ends tonight, Wolf." The clash was brutal. Jaime fought with desperate fury, each strike aimed to cut through Ned's honor and life. But Ned was no green boy. He met every blow with ice, the greatsword ringing like winter's hammer against Jaime's quicksilver blade. Around them, guards clashed once more, wolf and lion tearing each other apart. Barristan cut down Cerberus with grim precision. Stark men fought with the fury of the north, but the Lannisters were just as wild, driven by desperation. Jaime pressed forward, his blade flashing like lightning. "You can't win, Stark. My father's banners are already on the march. You'll drown in lion's blood." Ned's voice was steady as ice crashed down. "Then I'll drown with honor, not treachery." At last, Jaime slipped, his footing lost on the blood-slick floor. Ned brought ice down in a sweeping arc. Jaime barely raised his sword in time, the force shattering the steel in his hands. His golden blade snapped in two, the broken end clattering across the stones. Ned stood over him, ice poised for the killing stroke. The Kingslayer knelt before him, beaten but unbowed, his green eyes burning with hatred. Cersei screamed, "Don't you dare!" Ned hesitated. His heart thundered. Here was his chance. End Jaime, cut the lion's head from its shoulders, weaken Tywin before the war even began. Robert's voice echoed in his mind, "End them, Ned." But his own honor screamed back. Jaime was beaten unarmed. To strike him now would be butchery, not justice. He lowered ice. "You will stand trial. Your crimes will be judged in the sight of gods and men." Cersei's laughter rang through the smoke. "Fool, mercy is weakness. You'll see, Stark, you'll see." And even as the words left her lips, horns sounded in the distance, the deep, booming roar of war horns. Ned froze. Those were no city horns. They were war horns. Tywin Lannister's host had reached the gates of King's Landing. As the throne room shook with the distant rumble of thousands of marching boots, Ned Stark tightened his grip on ice, his honor heavy as a millstone. He had saved his friend, he had stood for the law, but in mercy he had left the lions breathing. Now the realm itself would pay the price. The Game of Thrones had begun anew.